Record. Okay, there we go. Welcome to our How to Research Targets and Move a Policy Priority webinar. So this webinar is for our H&P advocates and PWN policy fellows. We're going to have a link to join the H&P advocates at the end of this presentation, so you can go ahead and do that if you'd like, but of course all of our web sessions are open to the public as well. And yeah, the Policy Fellowship is a year-long program that's designed to support women, trans and non-binary folks living with HIV to gain skills in policy advocacy. So just to go over our usual logistics and agreements, we are recording and live streaming to Facebook. Please share your name, pronouns, and location in the chat. We have closed captioning on. There are no dumb questions, and this is a space to learn together. And when you ask questions, if you ask questions in the chat, we will keep track of them and answer them as they come up. So we have 3 learning objectives for this webinar. The first one is to learn about the role of relationship building in policy advocacy. The second one is to learn how to build and maintain relationships with policymakers. And the final one is to learn some best practices in researching a policy target to develop a relationship. And just a quick note, we are going to be kicking any AI transcribing bots that we see, just because of issues with recording people without their consent. But this recording of the webinar will be available to folks. And if you need any further accessibility assistance, please contact us via chat. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Sattie now to get started. Thank y'all.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Thank y'all so much for letting me in this space. I am so excited to spend time with you all tonight. I'm gonna have PWN team help me through these slides. All right, so hi, for those who don't know me, I am Sattie Nyachwaya. I use she, her pronouns, and my 9 to 5 is I'm a state policy manager for AIDS United, but every day, all day, I am an advocate. So I'll go to the next slide. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about policy, advocacy, and relationships, but more of a discussion because y'all know what to do. Y'all are the rock stars already. It's just me kind of mapping out to give you best practices. So kind of giving you a little bit of backstory about me. I've been in HIV work since end of 2017 to go into 2018. I feel like I'm a weaver. I love relationships. I love connection. Through AIDS United, I'm able to do policy, state level work across multiple states. So I focus on spending time with folks like you. I love reproductive justice. I love HIV work, and I love LGBTQ issues. So partnerships is my thing. And I'm really excited to be in this space with you all tonight because I just actually got out of a fellowship last year. So this is like putting all of the work that I learned in the fellowship to use. So thank you all tonight for letting me do that, if I don't say before. Next slide for me. So I want to give you kind of tonight of where we're going to go. So we're going to talk about how policy and advocacy and partnerships are very much interconnected. I'm going to do a policy 101, but not basically just giving you a guideline of the key thing you need to know when you're doing policy work. We'll talk about some best practices, and I'll kind of get your piece on different ways that we can be able to research policy targets and what has worked for me. Again, all of my things that I'll tell you in this presentation are not proven, they're just tested. These are going to be things that you can take along with you. And then I cannot have this conversation with you tonight without talking about compassion, fatigue, and burnout, because as we do this work, it is exhausting, it is tiring. And so I want to leave us all with something of us being kind to ourselves. Is that okay with everybody? You can put it in chat, move it around. Yay. Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
So tonight, I'll start out by saying in the beginning, I had no idea that I wanted to do policy work. I just knew that I wanted to build relationships with people and empower them. And so I found out what advocacy really was. I used to never call myself an advocate because I didn't know exactly what that really meant. And I thought it was larger than life. And I never felt like I saw myself in a political space, but I understood that policy is systems. And I realized I knew and I love systems and understanding in order to make those systems better, I had to build relationships and partnership. And understanding is that as my advocacy gets better, my relationships get better, and I really can change things as systems as far as policy. So I want to send that message to you all tonight is that if you can build relationships with people, you can do policy and advocacy work. And as you are in this journey with your fellowship, it's understanding is that all of these things are very much interconnected and you can't do one without the other. And that as you do one, you're really doing all three. Next slide. And so I'm not really going to do a policy 101 with you all because all of y'all kind of know how policy works, but I want to send a message about policy in general. And so understanding is that a lot of times in our society, we struggle with like not being able to see things happen, which is why we have folks that are struggling to do voter turnout. We're struggling to have folks who are at the table because they can't see things happening, so they don't want to get involved. And so, if you're sitting tonight and you're maybe doing policy work already, or maybe you're trying to get into the space to do more, it's understand is that change really does happen at the state and local levels because you can see policy creation or systems actually happen. And so, if you can really understand the policy creation in your state or in your respected town, you can really do policy 101 in your sleep. And so tonight I am going to kind of break it down a little bit. And so we talk about bills, but I'm not going to say bills. I'm going to say ideas because ideas are really what bills are, right? And so say for instance, if I wanted HIV testing in all grocery stores, we're just using that as an example. That's an idea that I want to build connection and relationship to get that introduced in the session to make sure that this idea becomes actual law or actually does happen. And so let's say that I build momentum of introducing that by building relationship with my legislator. If I get enough support, my legislator can put that through and introduce that in session. And once that's in session, a lot of times they will let the ideas go through a committee review where they get to amend it or reject it. And if it gets approved, then it gets to hit the floor in the session. And these ideas are debated on, they're voted on by the House and the Senate. And if they make it through those pieces, then they get to hit the governor's desk. So understanding that the systems of how long it takes for ideas is where you're going to be the biggest bang of your buck. And so tonight we talked about relationships. Relationships is one, getting your idea introduced. Relationships is one, building on to get your actual idea to go through committee review. Relationship would be building on making sure that your bill gets debated on and voted on. And relationship would be building is really getting your bill to really make it out of both the House and the Senate so that you can continue your work. And so understanding that policy creation is really key in building relationships and will change. Without understanding how systems are created, whether it is at the legislative session or it's with your health department and knowing how these laws are in place, relationship building is like key. Next slide. And so I want everybody to kind of use their chat tonight. So I'm going to give you some best practices of what has worked for me when I'm researching policy targets. And I will say policy targets as key folks who are decision making and how you build relationship. Use your chat tonight, or you can come off mute. What do you think is the hardest part? Either developing a relationship or maintaining a relationship? And I'll give you all a second.
Maintaining a relationship.
Okay. I can't see the chat, so I'm hoping someone else decides to come off mute. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think oh,
go ahead.
Maintaining.
yeah, I definitely think it's maintaining a relationship because I feel like it would be pretty easy to
Right.
start speaking to people initially, but to maintain it because that's when the authenticity and the genuineness comes in.
For sure.
And a lot
For
of
sure.
times politics lack that.
For sure. So I'm going to give you some research to kind of get you started. So when you are deciding what you want to do to figure out who is the person that you need to build that connection with or that relationship or even maintain it is how you get started. Because a lot of times in advocacy work, they don't tell you how to get started. They just tell you to go, right? And so starting out is that use spreadsheets, post-it notes, use all the dry erase marker, chalk, whatever you need to help you create a system, and it's called power mapping. So power mapping out. So clearly defined first what the purpose of the relationship is. And so for me, what I did, so I did HIV advocacy day at the Capitol in Texas last year. And so one of the things with me managing that is I wanted to define the purpose in the relationship. Like, why did I need to get key people to help me with this big, huge, over the top, larger than life thing? And once you know your purpose, you can get through the rest of the piece because that's going to always bring you back to your center. Are you wanting support for whatever you're trying to do? Are you wanting collaboration from this relationship? Are you wanting feedback on a specific policy effort? Understanding the goal of the relationship will guide you in the research and the interaction strategy. A lot of times people will use Excel and like power mapping tools to help them figure out to define that objective and then divvy out what it means when they get that objective, like what that relationship's going to look like. And once you are able to do that, you got to go to the next step by understanding the policy landscape that's in your state. So, like, if you, or maybe even in your city, depending on wherever you live. So, for me, for Dallas, I needed to understand the history of HIV work in Dallas, and I needed to understand who the key players are, and not necessarily candidates, but maybe it ended up being somebody from the health department, or maybe it was an influencer that does a lot of outreach work, or maybe it was a decision maker that is a part of the planning council. Finding out who these key players are who may not necessarily make the decisions, but they're involved and who can determine the influence of the outcome of whatever you're trying to do or the policy that you're wanting to hit. And I can't see the chat, so I'm going to give somebody a second to bring up if they have a question, because we're going to make this interactive.
I really quickly wanted to uplift something that MJ said in the chat, which is,
Yeah.
for me, it is developing because it can be difficult to get in to see certain representatives. I feel once you get through to them, then it's easy to maintain the relationships.
Oh, for sure. And keep in mind is that, and I will tell you in the midst of that, is that, and I'll get into that as far as later on in the space. So you're not too far off, is that understanding like it's hard to hit reps, but maybe your relationship is not going to be the rep. Maybe it's the staffer that's in the rep's office who can influence the outcome of what the policy is. So not necessarily is it going to be the person who's making decision, because representatives are super busy and super hard to keep up with. But building a relationship and connection with the staffer is really going to be your best suit. And that's when you're researching your policy target, figure out if they heavily rely on staffers, realize if they heavily rely on their campaign manager, or realize if they really value the community's input to figure out which person you need to talk to. Maybe the relationship doesn't need to be with the representative. Maybe it needs to be with the staffer. Maybe it needs to be the person at the health department that's having a meeting with the rep. Keep in mind is that all relationships are going to be different, and all your research is going to be tailored and designed who that person is. And once you kind of collect this information, again, you can start realizing the policy's target by past positions that they had on a certain issue, actions that they did. A lot of these things could be found on social media, YouTube, Google, all these different things. Use those to your advantage to find out the collected information so you know how to play the game. Because it's really a game of like really building a relationship of that. And once you have collected this information, you're doing all the research, is that you show up. One of the things that some people in Dallas used to say all the time is when I first started is that I didn't know anything about anything. I just knew I wanted to show up. And I felt like if I kept showing up in the same space, that eventually somebody was going to talk to me because I just keep showing up. And so finally, that really did happen. Somebody literally came to me and was like, you know what? You keep showing up every single time that this person shows up. Like, what exactly do you do? And as I was able to kind of build that connection with them and start a conversation, it turned out to be they were a person that could influence the target that I really needed to be in, but I wouldn't have been able to get there if I hadn't have shown up and built conversations. And so I think that one of the key pieces in all of this is attending events, town halls, community events, coffee shops, other shops that candidates, staffers, any type of person that's a decision maker or maybe has influence of that in your community that's doing it, attend spaces that they are in, and keep showing up, because the more that you show up, the more they're going to be realizing like this person is not going away. So I need to ask them what they're doing and how they're doing it. And then you're going to have to, once you do that researching, you're going to have to gauge to find out whether or not when's the perfect time to do the interaction and when to have that conversation. And you get all your points and your questions together, because once you write them down and you have them in order, and maybe you already have them and you know what to say, you just need to know who you need to talk to, you'll be able to have those conversations and you'll know when to make the ask. Next slide. And so I know a lot of tonight you all said like building and maintaining relationships is really hard. And I will be honest and truthful and super transparent is that there is no one size fits all and there is no science. But what I will give you is some things that have helped me in the process when building relationships with folks. I will say that identifying and understanding who you're reaching out to and knowing who they are outside of the work that they do, understanding the most relevant targets for your advocacy goals is so important. So you would want to like do your homework and be prepared. And that means establish credibility, and they would help you be able to find out what respect and build that you do within your targets. So I see a couple hands. I'm going to let you come off mute if you like, because I can't see the chat.
Sattie, this is Melanie Reese.
Hi.
And your building relationships with staffers, that usually is a good way to start a relationship with, especially trying to get closer to a elected official.
Mm-hmm.
However, last AIDS Watch, most of the staffers were brand new. Gone
Wow.
seems like the days where loyalty and people stuck with someone. So they weren't really that familiar with the rep, with what they're doing in their job. So that was the first time that became crystal clear to me, was last year's AIDS Watch. That,
And I would say
have to
too,
rethink that.
I mean, I get what you're saying too, Melanie. And I also do agree with you too. I've been in a situation where like the staffer had no idea, like if they had only been in the role for like literally 2 months to be able to do. And that's all about also to redirecting your strategy approach is also sometimes it isn't the staffer. Maybe it's the campaign manager. Maybe it is someone at city council that has a relationship with the rep, and a lot of it is taking time to know which one, and sometimes it won't be the first time that you get it right. sometimes you may talk to the staffer and you've spent like 2 months with the staffer and then you find out that that's not even the staffer that you need to be talking to. Understanding that maintaining relationships is also taking time to build so many to get to that one that you really need to get to. I hope that answers your question. I think someone else had a question.
Yes, it did, Sattie.
It was me. I was going to comment on what you asked earlier. On the two questions you gave. Mine's just getting someone. This is Brielle. I'm sorry, everyone. Getting someone to people to accept and understand that you're in the advocacy field, because a lot of people, if you don't work for one of these big organizations, they don't really just recognize you as an advocate, and that's belittling.
And I think that's also too where you're going to do the connecting, engaging, and influencing. And that's where you nurture the relationship too. Because I definitely understand you completely about sometimes people don't understand your story and don't understand why it's important to you and don't give you the credibility that you necessarily deserve at first. I've had relationships where, or people that I know that I need to create a relationship with, and at first I had to show that I was good enough to be in the space. And it's terrible to say it in that standpoint, but it is real, is that nurturing the relationship or connection first, and then understanding and demanding that you need to be in the space in order to maintain the relationship, and walking in with it knowing that you deserve to be there, that you are an advocate, that you can provide intel. And so being honest and direct in the very beginning is also very important when you're connecting with them, so that you can engage. That way your engagement is meaningful, but also very intentional, and they know what you're doing in the beginning. And this kind of goes into the giving the ask. I will tell you that the ask is not going to always be the first time. You're going to have to gauge relationships. Sometimes the ask is the 15th time that you've seen them and had conversations and connected with them. Sometimes it's the second time. But when you do make the ask, you want to be completely specific in saying what action you want them to take, whether it's you being in supportive of their work, or you wanting them to become a supporter, or wanting to be a champion of the policy that you're trying to make change on or amendments to, or however that may look. Is that understanding when to gauge the ask, and that comes with practice. And so keep in mind that also with relationships also, you've got to be prepared that as you are nurturing them, that there might be rejection and fail. Relationships are going to always have some backlash. There's always going to be some that you're like, dang, I wish I shouldn't have done that. Like this is a person that maybe I wasn't able to really connect with at first. And this is not the relationship no longer services what I need to make change with. And so being prepared is that as you are trying to connect, is that you could get rejected, or you could have other ways to get around. And maybe the person that you don't need to be with, you got to go through 3 relationships to get to that person that matters. It's playing the long game with relationships and persistent communication. It just takes time.
I see, Keneen, you have your hand
I
raised.
understand. I'm sorry. I was just getting out the car.
So basically, what I'm hearing is when you say be able to gauge, another term me and my girlfriends use amongst each other when we're being smart with each other is read the room.
Yes.
And also what I'm getting from this is, like, on the other side of that, one of the other members was just sharing, the opposite of, like when you're not being seen and respected as an advocate. But the other side of that is sometimes, we have to remember that politicians can be intimidated by an advocate who is extremely well prepared. And so learning how, again, to like read the room and like be passionate, but like not come on so strong that you give them an excuse to run off. you know,
Right.
like learning how to balance that. And I think that's where I struggle. So I was glad to hear this information because, you know, I can be real cocky and you don't get anything done because now they're like, I'm not gonna be able to work with them. They think they know everything, you know, so like
For sure.
learning how to, yeah, so learning how to like dial it back a little bit.
For sure. And you know, sometimes it really is a lot. Like, you know, I will uplift something that helps me a lot is like, I want to know who you are outside of this work. Who are you? Are you the person that really you are, you like riding bicycles on the weekends? Maybe that's the connection that I need to make with you first before I even get you to this advocacy piece and building connection with you first. Because if I can connect with you on self-care and us doing yoga together, that will allow me to get you to the next step to where I can throw in the policy space or the ask that I need you to ask. It's going to take time. You just have to be very specific and gauge and understand is that not every relationship is going to go absolutely amazing because you're following step A, step one, step two. Sometimes you will do step one and step two, but you got to go to step four because the third is not making sense. And so it's almost like a chess playing, if that makes sense, as you are building and maintaining the relationship. And even after you've made the ask, like the follow up sometimes can be very intimidating. Maybe you did make the ask, but you haven't got a response back. They just said, oh, that's great. I will work on it. Right. Is that when you make the ask, let them know you're coming back because you want them to be in support and you want them to be accountable. And the piece of it, following up in the interaction shows that you not only want to maintain a relationship with them, but you really value them also in the space with this relationship. Next slide. So I'm going to give two people, and you can also put in the chat too. Tell me, what is your favorite self-care thing you do? What is something you love that you do for you?
Hi, Sadie. This is Yolanda Ross from Houston.
Hi.
So my self-care thing for me is prayer, and I love to journal. Most
Okay.
importantly, what I love to do, I may find this very interesting, but I love going to conferences, and here's why. When I'm able to go to a conference and everything and meet new people, but also in the process of me getting educated, getting informed about certain things that I'm passionate about, that brings me joy. So those are some of the self-care things that I like to do.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I see a little bit of people putting something in the chat. I can see it now. Singing, painting. I love this. So I think it's important that we also talk about keeping our cup filled as we're doing advocacy work. We cannot pour into others or make change or impact lives if we don't take care of ourselves first. And it's important to always prioritize that as you are doing work. Some days will be better than others, but I could not come on tonight and talk to you about relationships without talking about having a relationship with yourself. And so compassion and fatigue and burnout is very important. Back in 2020, passion fatigue was something that started to be very big as healthcare professionals started feeling very exhausted taking care of people. And it became something that was very prominent around the advocacy space, is that folks who have been doing this work for years and years and years felt super exhausted. But then the new folks that started to be in the space that really wanted to make change felt so exhausted with the passions that meant most to them of taking care of folks. And I think it's important that we talk about how sometimes it's just super exhausting trying to you're trying to make change, you see it, you know it, and you really want to be there. And knowing means that you're also very exhausted at the same space. And burnout is real. I, have experienced both. And, your physical health and your mental health, and your emotional health is affected by you actually having any type of burnout. And so I've got some ways that I fully hope that you engage in that prevent these things from happening. And so I talk about tonight is self-care. Maybe your self-care is, for mine, I love my wine night where I turn off all politics. I turn off everything at 6 o'clock on Tuesday nights and I drink my favorite bottle of red wine. That is my self-care. Maybe your self-care is just getting out of your house on the weekend and doing something that you love. Find ways that make you love you for you so that you have enough love to love what you want to do for others. Always consider the impact of how your advocacy efforts or your relationships and decide when it's time to stop. And I say that with boundaries because this is something that I'm still learning in my journey as an advocate and as an activist, is that realizing that maybe the 5 connections that you made are those really great 5 connections, and decide if those connections are worth enough or if it's time for you to take a step back. Either find ways to balance or find ways to create boundaries for yourself to be able to handle. And a lot of this goes into focusing on one fight at a time. Maybe your focus is only building connection. You want people to understand your name when you're in the room. Maybe that is your fight. Maybe your fight is making and building connection with certain individuals, and that is your one main fight. Maybe your fight is developing a relationship and really maintaining that relationship. Focus on one thing at a time. Don't feel like you need to do 15 different things at once. That will cause you to feel better and be stronger, and also help you to build better relationships. When I first started doing community work, I felt like I needed to be every single space. I needed to be everywhere because I wanted people to know my name and I wanted to have these connections with them and I wanted to do all these things to make change. And I realized that I am only one person. And if I'm not good, I cannot be better for my passions. And so finding out one fight that means something to me and focus on that fight and get through it, and then pick another fight so that you're not getting exhausted. Communicate your feelings. And so I say that all the time because I'm not a person that communicates my feelings. I let folks communicate them to me. And so I think it's important is that communicate your feelings during relationships. Like, relationships are hard, whether they are platonic, romantic, professional, they're hard and they take time, and not one all size fits. So communicate your feelings, and spending time with the people who do love you and do value you will help you create better relationships outside of that. I know that Grace raised something in the chat that I wanted to uplift if available. She said, I wanted to make sure that it's important to develop a thick skin or not treat rejection as a lack of access as personal, but look at the big picture. It's not about you. Yes, that is so true. It is not always about you, but it is. And so remind yourself that delayed doesn't mean denied. It just means that that's not the space for you. And so remind yourself that never take anything personal, is that we're all here to grow and learn. And it takes time to be able to develop a space, is that you're here, your message is to create change, but it's important to know that you also matter in the piece of that. And I think there was someone in the chat too that posted something else. It looks like, oh, burnout can look quite counter. Okay. Very true. I'll give you a chance. I don't know if you can come off mute or not. What do you think burnout looks to you? Feels like to you?
So I've experienced burnout and fatigue, and it can look like bitterness. It can look like, excuse my French, fuck this movement, fuck this work, fuck all y'all.
I get that right there, girl.
And that's not, and that's, and I've been there before, to the point of where, like, you have to know when it's time for you to step back because you'll mess it up for everybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So knowing when to say, okay, you know what? My well is empty. I don't have anything to give anybody. Like you said earlier, if you're empty, how can you give to other people? And so knowing when it's time to replenish yourself, I like this. I use this one. I'm okay with riding the bench. And then when I'm ready, coach put me back in the game.
That's true. No, it is true. You have to gauge, and only you know when it's time to stop, or when the efforts that you're putting in, the work, the compassion that you're putting in, whether it's time to take a step back and whether it's time to gauge it and lift it up. But only you know that. No one else can set those parameters but you. And finally, I think it's also to asking for support. And I live by this. Asking for help does not approve my ability. If I say I need help, that means I need help. Doesn't mean I'm not good enough, because I'm good enough. I just need some help. And so I think it's important is that when you're doing this work and you're doing relationships and you're building, asking for support is not void. You are capable and able to do all the things that you want to do. Everybody needs a little extra line of support as they are continuing to do this work. And so again, I leave you with one thing tonight, is to be kind to yourself and understand that relationships, you have to play the long game. And what you may do with one relationship, you cannot do with another relationship. And that you are going to have to find ways to kind of be a spider and go through different spaces so that you can really continue to make those relationships matter, to make change that you want to do. And that's what I got.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, I have a problem with asking for help. I feel like when I ask somebody for help that I'm bothering them. So it's like hard for me to just come out and ask somebody, well, can you help me with this, please? Because it makes me feel like I'm bothering them. So I guess you say, I guess what's the, I don't even know the question.
Well,
I'm trying
let me see if I can break it down too, because I
Yes.
can help, because I also struggle with that too. In my personal life and my professional life, I'm just a suffer in silence person. So
Yes.
I totally understand. I think that writing it down helps me. I think that how you ask it makes it sound a little better. If instead of you saying like, hi, I need a little bit of help, hi, I need a little guidance, if that makes sense. Because now you're not really telling me what I need to do. You're just telling me if I'm doing it right. Sometimes when you're asking for support, you're not really asking for support, you're asking for validation. So understanding is that there's a difference in between the two, of when you are trying to do this work and how it can be gauged. And maybe you don't need help. Maybe you just need validation and encouragement as you are doing this work. And so think of your help as guidance more than actual like help with like reins to kind of guide you along the process. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, let me just say this, LaShonda, as women of color, I think it's ingrained in us to be the superwoman, that, oh, if we ask for help, that's a sign of weakness. If we ask for help, it's, we just we're so needy. But I have to advocate that we have to grow and evolve, which means that it's okay for us to be a little bit selfish and open our mouths and say, I need help. Huh? I need help. You're about to be married to an amazing man. And one of the things that my mom used to always say to me, my mother's from Grayville, Louisiana, deep south, a closed mouth don't get fed. You have to use your voice and ask for what you need. So, start small, go to someone safe that, may reciprocate what you need and everything. Start practicing on people, because I guarantee you that once you start doing this skill, you're going to see a change in your overall self-esteem, your overall well-being, and your overall thinking.
So true. So true.
Thank you.
I left the last two slides for questions and answers, but I wanted to go to the very last slide. So I put in my information. and my contact information. You all are more than welcome to use my email and phone and reach out to me if you are feeling lost or alone or you need some guidance or reassurance. I am here. You can also follow me on all social media platforms, and you all are already rock stars, so just go. If you know how to talk to people, you can do policy and advocacy, and I'll leave it at that.
Before you go, I just want to thank you for doing the series with us because it gave so much information and insight to what we need to know. And for me, it was stuff that I didn't know. And I just wanted to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and be with us. I'm not speaking for everybody, but just for taking time out of your schedule to come and be with us and to teach us some things that we might know and we might not know. Thank you so much for that.
Of course, y'all are the rock stars. Y'all do this. I'm just here. Y'all got this. And Maya, I'll turn it back to you if there's no other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Do y'all have other questions?
Well, I honestly just wanted to say, at first, you know, if I'm being totally transparent, I don't know if it was because I had missed the first 2 or 3 minutes, but the information was a lot to absorb. But as we got into it and we began to keep talking, you know, I was able to absorb more of the information. And she was dropping some gems tonight. You just kept dropping them.
So Elena asked in the chat, do folks already have policy targets in mind? And I know that for our fellows, they're at the start of their like practicum projects, so they do actually have policy targets in mind. So if y'all want to ask Sattie about something specific related to your practicum, now would be a good time to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I see Kelly, you have your hand raised.
I also think since we have a little time and we have Sattie, AIDS Watch is coming up in the spring. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about if folks are going to AIDS Watch, who should they be expecting to meet? Maybe they can start to do some research into those folks.
Woo! So definitely AIDS Watch at 2024 is coming up in March. I think that when you're looking for policy targets, is one, think about what is important to you the most. It will make the relationship better. You cannot just look up when you're trying to figure out policy targets. You want to try to make sure that there's connection. Relationships start with connection and awareness to that connection. If I am not passionate about HIV, I can't talk about HIV. So I need to find ways to make sure that it makes sense to me. So don't try to look for a policy target that's not going to service you. So for instance, for me, I probably wouldn't engage necessarily with a policy target that is on the fence about the things that matter to me the most. So I'm going to be looking at which candidate is, or maybe representative that is necessarily maybe on the fence of an HIV champion, or they are already a HIV champion, but they just need some accountability. And those are going to be my targets of what I would have done. And I would have started to see like what they've done before in the past. I would have seen like how they move in the work, what policy that they've already created or amended or sponsored, if that makes sense, and then go from there. So always make sure that like you have connection to whatever policy target you're going to do, because trying to go out there on a limb and talk to maybe someone who's counteractive to what matters to you the most is going to be the hardest.
Yes, that totally makes sense. Thank you, Sattie.
And I seen something that was in the chat about strategies in dealing with anger and frustration. Maybe, Eileen, if you want to kind of piggyback or kind of give me a little bit more intake on that one so I can answer you.
Yeah, yes, this Sally. in doing the work for so long, some of us, the advocates that's been here, like I've seen a lot of the names that have gone out and done a lot of advocacy with us. And being in it for so long and still dealing with some of the issues with some of the representatives and stuff, not even knowing what undetectable is, not even knowing just common stuff that we've, I know, gone over 50 million times.
Mhm.
And you don't want to say, how is it that we've given you?
Uh-oh.
I think we lost audio.
Oh no. I guess I can kind of go off a little bit what she was saying. Frustration is real. So I'm not going to lie to you and say you won't be frustrated. You will. I won't tell you that you won't be angry. First, you will. Having policy targets, not understanding or choosing not to is different, but you're going to have to change your ask. So no longer is it going to be, do you know about HIV? It's going to be like, I'm pretty sure you're already aware of HIV work, but where's the accountability that goes to it? You're going to have to change the ask and the connection that you make with them. Maybe it isn't more, it's not going to be very much streamlined. It's going to be more of strategicness and how you are changing the messaging of how you are building the relationship. And a lot of that is understanding the field that you're in. But I'm not going to tell you that frustration doesn't happen and that you choose to be, but that's when you push in your self-care and you push in why you are there to eliminate that compassion fatigue and understand is that it's okay to feel those feelings, but navigate them in a way that surface you the most. For sure, Wanda, they have a lot of things that are on their plate. And a lot of times they might not always have time to pertain to a certain issue or understanding of what we are going through or the things of how we are. So always understand like the amount of effort versus the amount of the ask, if that makes sense.
MJ, I see you have your hand up. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, kind of like when because here in Colorado, I have met representatives that have expressed to me how shocked they were when I introduced myself to them as living with HIV. And because of the shocked look on their face, I asked them, why do you have that look? Or, why the shocked look? And it was mainly because they were saying that they had never met anybody living with HIV. They expected someone to look sick living with HIV. Mm-hmm. So I guess instead of being frustrated, because I was fairly new at the time, I think for me and being an advocate, knowing that I'm going to talk to representatives a lot of times because we are advocates, it's not always, to me, part of the ask is always education, or part of our job is always the education. So if I'm going to walk into that office as a person living with HIV and I want to educate a little bit, because that person may not know, half the representatives out there won't even admit to have people living in their districts with HIV, let alone whether they know someone living with it.
Yep.
So a lot of times, instead of being frustrated, I think sometimes it's best to just use it as that educational piece again. And, and that same representative, I can walk into that courthouse that Capitol building here in Denver, Colorado, any time of the day. And if that representative sees me, he will go out of his way to come and say hello to me. So,
but you know what, though? That's your building your relationship for sure.
I'm back. I apologize.
And it's a follow-up.
I apologize. My connection had dropped, but I was saying, if you have a representative and you've gone to that representative, you've educated that representative, you've talked to that representative, a group of representatives, and you know that they've been educated, and then you get in front of them and they act like they don't know, or they try and avoid you. How do you deal with the frustration or the anger without it coming across to them and then cutting off that connection with that particular person? Because sometimes they'll act like they don't know, but they do. That's what I was saying.
So I think that your feelings are super valid in that, to feel frustration. I think that, like, as an advocate, we're going to always forever be educating, as MJ said, that's just a part of our goal. Unfortunately, I do think that consistency over and over brings time. I also believe in when you are building relationships, you follow up is a part of maintaining those relationships, and they will remember you. So I might have to talk to my legislator 5 years in a row over the same thing, but I followed up with them 5 times after, and they remembered me because I showed up at their campaigns, I showed up at their town halls, and I brought up every single time HIV. So now they saw me maybe 5 times, including of having a conversation with them. On top of that, a lot of times the consistency piece is the hard part where it is taxing on us, but it is what is needed when you are doing advocacy relationships, if that makes sense.
I was saying, like, you go there, they know your name. They
Right.
try to get your head down. Because you've been there several times.
For sure.
Them on that particular subject several times, and then they still act like you didn't just come 5, 6, 7 years in a row, and you're frustrated and you're angry, but you don't want to convey what is a strategy you could use not to convey that anger and that frustration when you've been saying this and educating them over the last 7 years, and you know they know what is a way or a strategy you could use when you're in front of them, because sometimes my face tells my tale. I smile past it a lot, but sometimes it shows. So what are some strategies you could use to channel that frustration and not break down that you see what I'm saying? I'm
Right.
not saying I'm not saying I'm frustrated about the work or that I hadn't educated. I'm saying, what are some strategies I could use that I don't appear to be angry and frustrated, although I'm angry and frustrated. I don't want to be
I think a good one would be to put yourself in the other person's shoes and like to try to imagine what they may have went through that day, or they may have had a stressful day, or we don't know what they went through. And so maybe take yourself out of the equation and try to put yourself in the other person's shoes so that you could approach the situation with a little bit more grace.
Okay.
And additionally, hey, also you could also take a moment and breathe. Like,
Yes.
give yourself some grace when you know this particular behavior that this representative or whatever is has always presented to you. You kind of have an expectation that that is what it's going to be. So you already are kind of tensed up. You already coming in with in a self-defense mode. And so like give yourself some grace, like breathe. It's okay to breathe and take it easy. Kind of go inside and talk to yourself. Maybe say a prayer if that's what you need to do. Take a moment and call somebody that you know that is cool, calm, and collective that can bring you back to your center. And if not, maybe you need to revisit them at another time once you've done some self-help and work on you and your emotions, and then you're better able to gauge those people.
Great. Thank you. That's what I was talking about. Thank you.
Yes, keep in mind that these legislators and these policymakers, they work for you. So they got to listen to you, whether it takes them 15 minutes, an hour, whatever. They are responsible for sitting there and listening to the needs of their constituents. So keep in mind that you can stop in the midst of your conversation with them and breathe if you need to breathe. Because sometimes you are going to be in situations with folks where you're having to build connection with them, and it's not somebody that you may pertain to actually like. And just continue to keep telling yourself, like, you are priority over everything. So breathe, pray, take a couple steps back, and always remind yourself that it's about the work that you're doing, not by the way they make you feel.
Absolutely. Yep.
There's a lot of poker face going on. Had to put on your poker face.
That's good too. Poker face.
Thank you so much, Sattie. This was absolutely awesome. I learned a lot, and like Kaneen said, you dropped so many gems today, girl. Like I was over here just snapping and like giving you the snaps, girl. You really it was awesome. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
For sure. Please, you all keep my information. Reach out to me if you ever need some additional support with relationship building. It does take time. Just be kind to yourself. And I'm here to support if you need me.
Thank you so much, Sattie, and thank you so much to our H&P advocates and PWN policy fellows for being here tonight. Please scan the QR code and sign up for our H&P email updates if you haven't already. And save the date for our next webinar. It's going to be on February 22nd, and it will be about conducting effective meetings with decision makers. Same time, 6 p.m. EST. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But again, thank you so much, Sattie, for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. And thanks, y'all, for being so engaged.